All right, it's that time of something. We're doing it. Frosties, it's happening. Frosthaven tier list. So this is something I've been working on for a while, but I haven't gotten around to it, and I decided to just do it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to rank all the classes, and then you are going to complain about the order I put them in the comments section, because that's how it works. Also, please feel free to fight with each other. I encourage it, as is the case on Reddit. This is going to be mostly off the cuff. I kind of put in my little notes and didn't really write much. So let's go. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like this content. We love doing Frosthaven content, and it really supports the channel. If you want to join Patreon for whatever reason, it does really help, and I'll have the link below. Keep being amazing patrons. You're all wonderful. Also, we have a Discord where we talk about Frosthaven and mostly Helldivers lately. We are going to be starting with the starters and then moving on to spoiler classes. So we're going to do the 6, and I will have a little segment separating every locked class. So we'll talk about them as we get there. So also, I'll have it bookmarked below. If you just want to navigate to a specific section, please feel free. So I want to talk about how the Gloomhaven, like previously, there was a video done. There was a little bit of bait in it, mostly because I was trying to annoy my one friend into thinking that the Saw was bad because he kept playing it bad. He was just a bad player, don't get me wrong, and not really a good person. Doesn't matter. The whole point is I just really liked gaslighting him. And I'm like, see, look, I'm putting it this way on my channel. It actually made people so angry in the comments section that I just kept rolling with it up until I made a Saw apology video where I actually dropped it further. Point is, it's fun, but I've kind of reduced the bait a bit, and I'm actually kind of just doing a pure power ranking video. But in that, Gloomhaven's power was definitely notably more swingy, where some of the bottom tier classes definitely had a little bit more struggles, either with leveling up, conditionality, or just their kits were not as strong as others. And clearly the S tier, those 3 classes, and you know the 3 I'm talking about, and if you ever make a tier list that doesn't include those 3 in the S tier, you are wrong. But those 3 are clearly very powerful, up to including one character that can like solo most characters, not even solo scenarios, full-on scenarios by themselves once they hit level 6. It's kind of busted, honestly. Being like, hello, I don't need a party, I will do the scenario. That's too strong. But that's not really the case in Frosthaven. So I'm actually going to break down S, A, B, C, D this time. S is just 2 characters that I think that within the scope of Frosthaven, and even when you convert it to Gloomhaven 2nd Edition, S is one of those classes where though the characters are just unaffected by whatever the toolkit brings. They are very strong. They are just their conditions they rely on are not as asterisk as the others, and they put out a lot of conditional effort to the scenario. So not only are they very good, but they are less likely to be, oh, the scenario screwed me over. And there are definitely those. So the weakest classes in this, I don't think are weak classes. I think that the weakest classes in Frosthaven, definitely, except for the Geminate, I do think is weak. Geminate lovers, I am going to speak to you one-on-one right now. Who hurt you? His name is Marcel. Anyway, so the whole point is S tier is largely unaffected. A, I think, are just the strong characters continued, but not in the same tier. They're usually pretty good or have like insane builds at level 9, but like, you know, there's stuff there where they can combo with like bonkers items later, but just generally strong classes. B, I think, is the aim to go for. I think like a lot of these classes are just good, but their ceiling kind of falls out. And that's kind of the difference between the A and the B, in my opinion, is the ceiling. Maybe the ceiling isn't bad, but there's more scenarios or situations where they can be screwed. And the C tier is, I don't consider bad classes. There's just the C tier is 2 classes that I think are very strong, but have more scenarios that give it the middle finger. I do think one of these classes, in particular in the C tier, I would bump up in the B tier in Gloomhaven 2nd Edition, because I do think it's just a good class, but there are so many scenarios in Frosthaven that say, hey, do this and this and this, and the class is just like, please just let me do my thing. And then the D tier, which is the Geminate tier. So let's start with the Geminate. Boom! Bottom tier is Saw. Geminate. Fuck. Geminate. I'm gonna be honest, as much as like doing all the stuff is, it's got like the gimmick of restricting its range at range form, but then you have to swap to melee form. But if you ever want to do ranged attacks, you have to bout back and forth. It's complete rigidness. It's like, oh, look at this class. It's so flexible. It's not. It's not as flexible as it's sold to be, and to the point where I think that it's just kind of frustrating to play. There are people who do love the class, and I'm not saying that if you love the class, it's bad, but I do think that there is enough problems with how it's designed that I think that for the most part, it plays too rigidly to effectively be called a high tier class. And I'm also not necessarily making fun of like, haha, Alice is making fun of Marcel. Marcel has my favorite class in this, and I think it's one of the strongest. I also think the Diviner is very good. So like, this is not a slight against Marcel. This is a slight against Marcel's Geminate, which is bad. And the next we're going to talk about is the Boneshaper, which is solidly in the B tier. The Boneshaper is definitely B because Boneshaper. That, by the way, the Geminate's actually in the G tier, and the Banner Spear is also in the B tier. That's a lie. Anyway, whole point is the Boneshaper's in the B tier, and this is partially because of asterisks. There's so many scenarios that go, hey, Boneshaper, guess what? You're screwed and can't do much. There's several instances where monster draws can really screw over a Boneshaper's turn, but in general, if the Boneshaper is let alone to do their thing, they can actually beat most of the other starters, if not all of them, depending on the situation, especially once you hit level 8. However, because there's so many asterisks, I have to put... I think this is one of the stronger classes, with several instances where the design of of Frosthaven bring it down a tier. Also, I think it's got a very high skill floor in that regard, and it's really hard for me to put high skill floor classes at high tiers if it does have a lot of but if moments. Just getting out a lot of skeletons like that is generally a good strategy for taking hits, but you have to find the way to heal yourself. So you can often find yourselves in situations where you have no skeletons and no health, and then what do you do? So you need to prepare for situations like that, have enough healing to be able to get yourself out of those, and you also have to know prepare for those situations. Additionally, there's several scenarios that say like, hey, you have to clear all this ice to get through. And then you're like, well, great, I built around this summoning this big guy. The big guy's going to spend the whole scenario just clearing the ice when we only needed to clear one path. And then that's just frustrating. Or the idea of, hey, there's these obstacles, and every time something's next to them, they suffer damage. And just watching as your skeletons should be taking hits, but they're just falling apart. That's me focusing on the negatives. But the positives is, once you actually play this character correctly and more in like in a vacuum, this character with the Boneshaper is probably one of the stronger characters. I'd put it in the upper half when things are going correctly. The biggest problem is a lot of times in Frosthaven, things aren't necessarily always going the way you planned, and that's a problem. But solidly in the B tier as an average. Drifter, also B tier, not D tier, B tier. The Drifter is hilariously probably the strongest. If you're like, all right, everyone, we're going to have this new challenge. You can only make level 1 characters. You can only use like items that are accessible at level 1. You cannot take perks and use only blah, and you can only fight level 1 enemies. The Drifter is probably the strongest character. That's the funny part. At level 1, the Drifter is bonkers. And as you level up, it's got some problems, like level 3, when you look at that and go, wow, this will help me very easily pick what card to lose during my long rest. God, I do think it's very weird. But like level 4 and 5 have some really good options for the Drifter. So, and towards once you get to level 9, the problem is it kind of just tops out. So the longer the campaign goes on, I think a lot of people play the Drifter very early as its starter, think it's super powerful, then don't really revisit it once you're like level 7 and 8 and realize that the Drifter has generally fallen to the middle of the pack. And so to that I say I'm going to put it in the B just because I do think it does, for most of its thing, fall to the middle of the pack while still having strong moments. The Drifter also gets the benefit of not necessarily being screwed over by so many scenarios. Like Frosthaven gets a lot of like stuff, but like you have to do this very special thing. The Drifter can usually do it, which is good. I would say it's because of its flexibility, because I think its flexibility is a little bit over advertised, because you kind of have to like, all right, I'm going to be good at this, but you have to remember to take the card while you're leveling up and like play it. Yeah, but at least you got Strategist Ring to help you like play stuff out. Anyway, point is, It's pretty solidly in the middle. I think it's probably slightly above the middle, but there we go. Banner Spear, C tier. I do think the Banner Spear, if you are playing by yourself and have full knowledge of everything, it's probably a tier above. It does have very good effects, but it does have the potential to be ruined by your friends. Your friends will ruin the Banner Spear for you. I don't necessarily think it's a bad class, but there's a lot of asks on it that feel like barely better. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of what I consider to be overtuned actions that are very good, but they like have a lot of asks that sometimes get screwed up, as well as some initiative stuff that's a little sketch. Don't get me wrong. There's some really good initiatives on it, and there's very easy ways to play the Banner Spear effectively, but I do think it's the group dynamic and the requirements on like every card, not every, but on so many cards, that make it just, you think that, okay, but if I play this perfectly, I'm going to kick ass. No, you're just going to be very good. And it's like, there's other classes that ask for less and do more. As a result, it's hard for me to rate the Banner Spear very high. But this is how swingy it is in the power scale of Frosthaven. I don't think that this is a bad class. I think it's a good class that's balanced, that asks a lot of the player, that's also more prone to being screwed over by monster draws and scenario rules. Deathwalker B. Deathwalker is one of those that I do think is generally pretty strong, but it tops out, and the tops out is generally the problem. There's a lot of classes that have the potential to like do some crazy things if you're like, look at this build, but the Deathwalker is generally pretty limited. Like, you've got clearly Strength of the Abyss and some other bonker stuff that you can pull off with that, but for the most part, the class is relatively narrow into how much you can do. The cool part is the amount of like things with teleport ends up being insanely valuable. Fluid Knight is one of the best level 1 attacks in the game. It's so easy to get Fluid Knight into position and just punch something, get an experience, kill it, get a shadow, and infuse Dark for your next turn. It's too good for momentum, and that's okay because it's kind of banking on the fact that you're using it for that. And in general, the builds, as you level up, only enable you to do better hits, and eventually you get some really punchy attacks like Dominate and whatnot. It just ends up being a really good class, but I don't think it's actually as screwed over by the rules. So despite the skills, like the fact that I think it tops out, I do think it's also less prone to being screwed over by the scenarios. So I think putting it in the middle makes it pretty fair. Blinkblade, A tier. I do think at low levels it's pretty good, has some drawbacks, but once you really start to level up and play some of those, the term being Nova Blade now, I forget what I called it initially, Burst Blade or something like that. Point is, Nova Blade is a bonkers build. It has such a high ceiling of damage that it can actually really take over rooms, especially in 2-player. Mostly because there's a lot of rooms that are like sized for the amount of players, and in 2-player, a Blinkblade can like straight up clear stuff by himself and just have the other person just walk through. You're like, I'm gonna have 3 to 4 really good turns, but that one room's just gonna be gone to where all you have to do is handle the last room, and it's like, that feels too powerful. And the answer is, it is. That's why we're putting in the A tier, because we're no longer into strong characters that are like limited by stuff. We're into strong characters that are above average in strength. The Blinkblade is far less screwed over by like anything related to the scenario. I personally think that with its really good initiative control, although it's advertised as being like really good with initiative control, you don't necessarily have as much because you do have to be sure to manage fast and slow tokens. And as a result, there will be times where you want to do this cool fast effect. There are too many times where I want to do the fast effect but go at a slow initiative, and that's annoying because I want to be like, okay, I want to go fast 2 turns in a row, but I want to go really late and then really early, and then it's hard to do that. So that's a little bit of the drawback. Despite that drawback, I do think that this is one of the strongest characters in the game and the strongest starter. Now we're going into the locked classes, and I will start with like them by what I consider to be order of appearance. So they are sorted in whatever order I want. But if you want to bounce to the section, please use the stuff to navigate below. I'm mostly padding this for time, so we don't just start the next class and people get spoiled. So I'm going to jump into the next class now. Trap. Everyone loves traps, and the Trapper is in the C tier. Normally I'd put traps really higher, but hey, this one is one of my favorite classes. It is super enjoyable. It is fun and amazing. And it is so screwed over by so many scenario rules that are like, hey, you need to go destroy this obstacle over here or objective. And it's like, okay, I can't knock a trap at you. All right, hold on. I'm going to build a trap and throw it into it. But like, if you don't kill it immediately, things are going to spawn until you do that. Or like, this guy's going to run over to here and you're like, okay, cool. Or like, hey, here, Marcel made a boss with flying and stuff like that. And you had to do other stuff. It's okay. I actually had a trapper destroy that scenario, so it's not so scary. Whole point is there are entirely too many situations that just screw it over. Now, some people go like, but you actually have a tool that would help you with flying enemies. And like, yeah, you have to bring a specific card spring-loaded just to be able to mitigate that. Or you have to take another card at level 2 that's not Path of Pain. And frankly, I don't care. I'm bringing Path of Pain because it is bonkers. Seriously, it's a really strong card. But like, there's just too many asterisks to the class to put it in there. It's a strong class. So it being in C does not necessarily mean it's bad. It just means that there are going to be so many scenarios in Frosthaven that make it frustrating to play. When you are allowed to do your thing, it's good. Honestly, I think in Gloomhaven 2nd Edition, if we were doing these characters but moved them over to the new Gloomhaven campaign, I would bump Trap up one because it's only the Frosthaven scenarios and not the power of this class. Fist! And this is in the B tier. The funny part about the Frozen Fist, personally, is it can do some really bonkers stuff, but it is definitely one of those classes that suffered from being capped out. There's a limit to how much you can do. I think my friend has been very convinced with like how few I'm long rest, how few times I'm long resting, to the point where I'm like, why am I bringing items that refresh on long rest? Like, screw that. I'm just gonna spend once the scenario items because you have stamina for days, especially once you get Preserved Fury. This class is one of my most favorite ones to play for fun. I don't necessarily think it's like mega strong. I do think there is a problem with it capping out, and I feel like there's definitely some bigger things here. I think it's borderline in the C tier, especially because you might screw yourself by like having to suffer damage and then having your whole build fall apart. But you do have ways to get out of that. The fact that you are like you are immune to wound and bane, and you have ways to deal with brittle and poison, and just from having permanent regenerate adds a lot to it. And then you do have a get out of jail free card with once a scenario when you'd suffer damage don't. So if you save that for the right moments, it's still pretty good. So don't get me wrong, I think the Frozen Fist is very good, but I do think that in general you've got some limiting factors that prevent it from ascending into the higher tiers, which once you dump it full of items, it just becomes a slightly better version of the Frozen Fist. Whereas some of the other classes with the right items just become bonkers. This class does not have that capacity, and I think that's why I'm putting it in the B tier. Snowflake! B tier, almost considered C, but there's too much potential for it for me to not do that. This is another class that has some scenarios that kind of screw it over, but it's got a lot of asterisk in the setup. You need to like put a card into play and then push a lot of enemies and have ice and do that, or you're just kind of playing support and it's really good at healing, but healing I don't think is, in my opinion, I don't value healing as much as damage. It's got lots of crowd control and push effects that make it very strong, but sometimes it makes it unwieldy to your friends. Despite that, it can do a lot. You have the stamina to play losses all you want. You have plenty of ways to heal your friends, knock over enemies, boost your friends' mobility. You have the Cat Tamer build at level 6 that's incredibly strong, especially for damage. And you just have ultimate versatility that make it really strong. I think this one, like over some of the other classes, have a little bit more of a ceiling, but I do think that your standard turns are a little bit more downturned. I'd probably lean towards this being in the A tier if you have everything set up correctly, but I think that in general for most of the campaign you're probably going to feel more towards the C, so we're putting it in the B as more of an average. I do think it's one of the it's a strong class that I think that for once you have like more reliable ways of generating ice and air, as well as ways to have those payoffs, you can feel it pretty well, especially for any of those things that involve multi-target and some of the higher level alchemy items and whatnot, where you can start to make some of these like 2s and 3s turn into 4s and 5s. Really allows you to have significant payoffs, so we love that. Kelp B. That's right. Now some people might go, hey, you are really loading up the B tier. Trust me, it's only in the way it's ordered. Trust me, there are some S's in there. There's 2 actually, but Kelp's in the B tier. I think part of it is because I wanted Bane Crab to be so much better than it is, but like the Bane Crab, like the condition build requires, and like you have to put these conditions on enemies, and a third of the campaign is in these unfettered scenarios where the unfettered give you middle fingers, and you're like, well, I want to give you Bane, but I need to give you like muddle or poison or something, and you're immune to that, and I'm like, or like I need enemies to be wounded, but you have several enemies that are immune to wound, so like I have to get killing blows, but I don't have. It just becomes sometimes very frustrating for the Bane Crab. I do think that the Stab Crab, which is not coined by me, I forget who came up with it. Stab Crab, I mean, it's pretty easy to figure out on your own. I don't think anyone copyrighted that. The whole point is Stab Crab has a lot going for it when it comes to items that say, especially those power potions, would say, hey, for your turn, all of your attacks get this bonus. Guess what? When you make a crap ton of attacks, +2 to every attack is stupid. Not only that, but like poisoning the enemy and then +1 to all of them, or like getting a bonus and +1 to all of them, it really adds up very quickly to the point where it almost, this one's class is borderline in the A tier, because I do think that this class does not suffer from having a low ceiling. I think it has a high ceiling that's mostly screwed over by Frosthaven. This is the one where I think if you brought it over to Gloomhaven 2nd edition, I'd have to bump it up into the A tier just because of there's less things that make things go wrong. But yeah, this one's barely in the A tier, would be a tier higher if it weren't for the scenario. I think maybe Stab Crab deserves, and I don't know. I'm not. Only played it a little bit, and my friend played it a bit, and it's harder to. And in testing, we struggled a little bit with the Unfettered. I'm gonna be honest, the Unfettered just hate this character so much. Coral, anemone, anemone. A tier. So this class is S+ with the right. If you are going Shuck Boss Killer, where you're going to say for 1 turn, I am going to destroy everything, the answer is yes. That build will destroy. It has the highest like damage potential maybe in Frost. No, I mean, Trap I think has the highest potential. I think Meteor is up there too. Whole point is this one is up there for 1 turn without like a bunch of but if. It's like, okay, if I have these items equipped and I'm this high level, it's dying and I'm doing too much damage. Like the idea of Shuck with all these stackable stuff, you're not even asking for the biggest thing, and you can definitely set up like 80 to 100 damage. Now, of course, you need like 4 turns of setup and a loss, but like if you're like, hold my beer, and then the boss is gonna be dead. Like that's busted. That said, for most of your career, I think you're going to be solid in the A tier. It does a very good job mitigating damage. It has a lot in its toolkit. Being able to take 3 actions means that your mobility is actually pretty good. I know a lot of people are like, oh, mobility sucks. Use 2 bottom actions, dude. Calm down. Especially when you have the upgraded boots that say +1 for the +1 to move actions this turn. So you can like move 2, which turns a move 2, move 3. Congratulations, that's a move 6. Get over yourself. But like the way the tide mechanic works is super fun. You have multiple ways to mitigate incoming damage. You have multiple ways of just dishing out conditions on enemies, including like rancid brines, just poison everything all the time. It's just a really strong class in my opinion. Solidly in the A tier, I think. And when you get it, it's probably closer to a B tier, as it's kind of like a slightly good tank. And once you get to high levels, it's probably in the S+ tier. It's up with the old school Gloomhaven broken people, but only for 1 turn. But that 1 turn is just busted. But it's a good character. It's a good class. Drill, A tier. So I love this character because if you do the no attack build where you're just entirely built off of, I want to take hits, I'm going to take these penalties, I'm going to do this event steam and stuff like that. The thing is, you can mitigate around some of the annoying effects of like, hey, these enemies have retaliate, or they accidentally drew a retaliate card, or they did blah, 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 blah. There's so many ways you can mitigate around like annoying enemies with like shield and retaliate by just not having to deal with them, by just doing true damage to them. And that's insane. Not only that, but even if you're like going the punchy build has access to Punch of Pierce that makes some of the most annoying enemies not so annoying. Not only that, but the character is very durable, has a lot of ways of mitigating annoying effects, has nonetheless stun in its toolkit, very accessible. And in general, you have a lot of ways to improve your own survivability while also just doing direct damage. It doesn't have a lot of the nuance of a lot of like, I'm going to do these negative conditions and do this, or I'm going to rely on these elements, and you do have some, you do have elemental interaction, but there's just so much around just burning steam up, or sometimes you just want to, I'm going to be at max steam all the time and punch things to death, which is fun. Or I'm gonna vent it up, then steam vent it out, and the enemies are gonna die trying to kill me, and which they're going to fail because I'm gonna be shielded this whole time. I'm building around it with your items. So I think it's very solidly in the A tier. I do think that once you bounce between this and move it to other games, it doesn't really get affected. I think it's strong no matter where you put it. It's a good class. Prism, or whatever, Diamond. Don't call, I hate that it's called Prism. You voted incorrectly. No, this is a strong class. This one is more prone to be screwed over by stuff, but this one has some of the highest skill ceiling in the game with the amount of actions and things that you can pump out. The amount of damage that you can do with this is kind of ridiculous. The amount of ranged attacks you can punch out, the idea of adding Pierce 5 to all your attacks, the idea of taking all these extra actions and having these things that are like dropping heals or like putting regenerate on stuff. It's just, how can you take this many actions in a round? Which some people are like, oh, I put it together and then all my things died. And yes, there are definitely ways for things to go awry with this character. So I'm not saying that that's the problem. That's what I'm saying is this character, like launch pod, boom, do some damage, boom, drop this other thing. Now I can swap to that thing. Now I have this other thing shooting from afar. Now I'm punching you in the face. Now I've dropped this other thing. This other thing is now going to be punching you in the face while I punch you in the face. Well, this shoots you. And then now I get to heal myself every time. Now I'm going to bounce into that. Now I've got this other heal bot that's literally going to be doing ping, ping, ping at you. I'll heal on me. And then like watch it in between like long rests as it like tries to mend everyone up and fly around. There is so much you can do with this that make it super versatile. The amount of damage it can do is actually incredibly high. And not only that, it's sustained damage. So it's not like, like some of these others where it's like, dude, I can do 100 damage in a turn. This one is like, dude, I'm going to just constantly punch through damage. And there's not much the enemies can do except for like draw that one card that screws me over. So getting a few get out of jail free cards out of items is basically necessary. I thought it was going to be a little bit more tanky, but I pulled like Warden's Robes just to be like, please don't kill my thing. But adding like another like couple health to a robot every rest ended up adding a lot. So this character is probably one of my most favorites, and oh my goodness, it's just a delight to play. So 10 out of 10. I want to put it a tier higher, but there's definitely way too many times where something can go wrong and then goes, well, that screwed it. So it's not in the S tier. So I'm like, wow, the S tier is awfully devoid of things. To which, yeah, that's my bad. All right, next, Meteor, S tier. So the Meteor reminds me a lot of what a couple other classes are like. Hey, I'm going to be dropping these hazards. Hey, I'm going to be dropping these traps. Hey, I'm going to be doing these things. Now the enemies are going to be... What if you did those and screwed with enemy monster behavior and did good damage and could have good healing and durability and just you do everything? What if you have good bottom attacks and top attacks? What if you have the ability to just pierce through things and wound things pretty reliably? What if you have a very easy way to, oh no, there's drawbacks on cards, but then go, I'm gonna short rest and just drop all of them. Like I'm gonna move 6, attack 5. Oh no, well, what's the downside of that? Don't worry, once I short rest, the downside's gonna fall off. and I'm going to set up an element for next round anyway and just keep doing it. There are so many things about the Meteor that just it's too strong, and not only that, it's consistently too strong. There's there's a lot of things that I like to do with screwing with monster behavior, where I can like, initiative wave. This is not like an I like to do thing. It's kind of like a standard staple of Gloomhaven play, but being able to do a lot of damage and dodge enemies is just kind of silly. Like this character is very silly. Not only that, but you have some like big bursts of damage with like, hey, I'm going to double this, and it's like, cool. So I'm going to turn this attack 4 +2 times 2 times 2. It's okay, 32. And they're like, wait, how are you 32? It's okay, don't worry. And it's just that's not like an uncommon thing. You can actually bump those numbers higher too. So the whole point is significant burst damage, significant sustained damage, significant control, good durability. It's got too much in its kit that it does well. S tier. Astral. S+++ tier, actually A. So this is my favorite character. This is so fun. Also, Emerald Sword, which is one of my favorite songs of all time, and she wields an emerald sword. I even asked the designer, hey, have you heard Emerald Sword? Because you designed a character with Emerald Sword with a card that's basically an emerald sword. And he's like, no, never heard of it. What is it? He'd evidently heard Rhapsody before, but like, oh my god, this character is the most fun. That's not what his voice sounds like. I don't know why I did that voice. Anyway, this character is so much fun. The idea of like, hey, I'm going to like put this infusion into play, so all my attacks get this cool bonus. But then every time I play infusion, this happens. So cool. I'm going to strengthen myself. Now it's like, okay, now every time I do a thing, I'm going to do an attack 3. Okay, now we're going to attack 3, but also it's an attack 3 with muddle and wound. But also I'm strengthened, so this attack and all my attacks during my next round get a bonus. Okay. And then like the idea of, oh, I'm at level 5. I'm going to heal this guy. Cool. But also counts as an infusion. So you're going to be a regen, and I'm going to do an attack 3 with muddle and wound, and I'm going to strengthen this. Just seeing it chain into itself, it is the most fun class to play. And then you get to like level 8, and you're like, hello, everyone. I apologize. I may have been a little bit too aggressive with my cards. I'm about to exhaust. And they're like, oh no, but we liked your damage. But I'm dropping the sword who will continue on in my stead with the same benefits of all my infused. Chonk, 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 chonk. God, it's fun. This class is just entirely too... It is definitely my favorite class in Frosthaven, and it's also strong. So don't get me wrong. I'm saying it's my favorite, but how does it stack up? The fact that it doesn't really get screwed over by scenarios because it can get jump on demand. So some of those like, hey, we've got an ice puzzle. He's like, okay, I'm going to jump. And she's just beautiful. And we love her. Look at her. She's very pretty too. But like, seriously, then you've got like, hey, I've got wound. Like, don't worry. I can just do some raw damage. That's good. So even wound immunity doesn't really screw it over. Or like, let's say they do have like, oh, well, I've got mega shield. They've got ways of doing direct damage, pierce and stuff like that. It's just... Their toolkit's really strong, and it's really fun. And it does require on 3 elements, but there are so many ways of actually generating elements to the point where I don't even think it's considered a downside anymore. There are entirely too many ways of that. So props to the Infuser, not Astral. I've just been calling it Astral because you voted it, but like, why Astral? I mean, I know it's because like Astral. It's like Astral and Arcane by Sorg, which is really great. You guys should check out Sorg. Cosmic Genesis is one of the best albums of all time. Shackles! S tier. So this character is bonkers. The idea of, hello, I'm going to give enemies Bane. Hey, I'm going to give enemies all these conditions. We have disarm for days. We have just ways to ruin enemies' life. So we have too much self-healing, too many ways to bounce enemy damage. It does too much damage. It does plenty of healing. It does too many crowd control effects. This character is just probably one of the strongest. The only thing that's problematic is it does definitely ceiling out, but the ceiling's pretty high in my opinion, to the point where I don't think it's a problem. I think I retired right at level 7 recently, and all I could think of was this class is busted. Not really busted in like the old Night Shroud sense, but it's definitely up there. the Shackles and its ability to, especially once you get to like hopelessness or being able to drop and redirect so much damage to enemies. And not only that, but it's mitigating incoming damage, disarming enemies, and then healing yourself to the point where your other allies don't really need to worry about what the monsters are doing, and they just need to worry about just killing things. That level of enabling is like why alcoholics exist. I'm just kidding. Please don't take that seriously. Do not drink alcohol. I mean, I drink plenty of alcohol. I've got a margarita waiting in the other room after I'm done with this video, and I'm high. Anyway, whole point is this class very powerful. Shards! So, if you're playing through Frosthaven, one thing you're probably thinking is, how do we unlock shards? And you're getting through halfway through the campaign and you're thinking, how do I unlock shards? And you're almost done with the campaign and you're thinking, how do I unlock shards? And to that I say, if Isaac, come here. Isaac, if you wanted to add a, hey, look, we beat Kingdom Death on the Kickstarter, why didn't you make a Twilight Knight? Why does it have to be this? Don't get me wrong. This screaming at all times, Savas is one of the most metal things you've made. So I love it. But also, man, it would be funny if we had like some sort of like thing. Although, I don't know. I'm kind of getting some ick vibes from, I forget his name. Glasses McDorkface, Kingdom Death creator. Anyway, whole point is I think he might be ick, but we'll see. No, hopefully we don't see. Hopefully he's just weird. Because I'm also weird, but sometimes. Anyway, shards. There's just really fun ways to do with this, like the wave mechanic. I know it was initially something else. I forgot what it was called, but it doesn't matter. But the idea of spending a shit ton of the resonance to just blow stuff up or do some cool effects. I was expecting it more so to be explosive when it's actually more of a support character, which I do think ends up being dropping it off a little. But you have really cool ways of like dealing with it, like between concentrated blast, which is a good way of just saying hello. I'm gonna just stun two guys and do attack. Like multi-target, non-loss attacks with stuns is really fun. And Calamitous Yop, which first off, I had to Google Yop when I first was testing this character because I'm like, I don't know what Yop is. But like, I'm gonna walk up to enemies, steal an element, burn a resonance, and stun two. Non-loss. Okay. The idea is having multiple access to multi-target non-loss stuns. That's strong. I want a little bit more of an assessment on this, but here's the problem. By the time we actually got to play this class, we had 50 million perks. We had like level 7, and so we only got to play this super powered character. So my opinion of it is it's very powerful. But like, what happens when you play this level 1? The answer is I don't know. So if you do actually have experience playing with this in other levels, let me know. And let me know if the A assessment is accessible. Oh, it's A tier. I don't even know if I said that. It's in the A tier because it's very good. But mostly good because it's got a lot of potential. It's got a lot of multi-target and a lot of interactions that result in stunning enemies to the point of rendering them useless. If it is in the S tier and I'm wrong, Nits or CGO will probably give me something for that, and they'll be like, how dare you put this in the wrong tier. But I'm going to be honest, this is one of the ones I haven't played with much. You got like Earth and Light, and that's fun. You got Resonance, and that's fun. Like, whatever. Just burn all of it and then just do cool stuff. You do have a thing at, what level is it? 6? Unsustainable wave to just completely reset. Just, I burned everything. Now it's back to full. I burned everything again. So you actually have some really bonker stuff. I do think that this is one of the more fun ones from what we've seen, but hey. Let me know your thoughts on this class because this is one I've hardly seen discussed as much as well. So that's the list. Congratulations. We've gone through all the characters. By we, I mean me. Are there any that you disagree with? They were like, excuse me, ma'am. You got this one off incorrectly, to which I'm going to say, I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you are wrong. but this is kind of, I'm pretty set on these. Actually, I might be persuaded, but honestly, it's kind of just a general assessment. I don't think, like, don't hold this to like, hello, I've been playing this game forever, and someone ranked this a low tier, so I don't want to play it. If you're having fun, please play the class. Like, this is not meant as a way to judge you. This is just more way of in the scope of things, what classes have the best way of handling certain things. If you're having fun with it, or let's say you don't find the Meteor fun, don't play the Meteor. You don't need to play the Meteor to beat Frosthaven. So it's like, don't use this as some sort of Bible. Don't use this as any sort of true thing. I think that balance in Frosthaven is notably better. And some people do look too much at tier lists, including every now and then KOP RPG, however it is, where I tried to drop a prank tier list on Reddit like 50 million years ago. And I added a secret icon, then pretended I accidentally spoiled something, and then he like pondered on that for every so often to the point we brought it up. I completely forgot that I did that shit post. Good times. Thank you for being a good sport on that, Pete. But anyway, the whole point is don't take it too seriously, and these are just my general thoughts. So I do hope it was at least entertaining, but that's about all the tier list can be, is entertaining. It doesn't necessarily have to be informative, but it was really fun to make, and I hope you enjoyed watching as well. So if you did enjoy watching, be sure to drop a like or drop a comment on what you think is what's the class you had the most fun with. What power? What would you change? Just let me know in the comments. So really would thank you for watching that, and thank you to patrons for supporting the channel. I really appreciate their support, especially during my hiatus. All of you are truly wonderful people, especially me. I'm really wonderful. But I really appreciate everything, and thanks for your support, and thanks all of you for watching.